Okay, welcome to Empowering Our Students, Online Design Strategies to Promote Voice and Choice. Take it away, Bethany.
All right, welcome everybody. We are here today to talk about voice and choice, which is one aspect of inclusive design. And I'm joined today by my fantastic co-presenters, Racheal and Amy. Do you want to introduce yourselves for a minute and say hi?
Oh, Bethany, do you want me to give them the co-host roles?
Oh, yes, please.
I did not know they needed that. Okay, hold on a second.
As they're doing that, I'll introduce myself. So hi, everybody. I'm Bethany Simunich. I'm CUM's Director of Research and Innovation. And as Mary Jane's giving the co-host to Racheal and Amy, I will mention Amy Grincewicz is joining me. She works at Kent State University. Racheal Brooks is here from North Carolina Central University. And hopefully they can give you a hey if they've been made co-hosts at this point.
Yes, we can. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Amy, are you good to go?
I'm here too.
All right, fantastic. Thank you both so much. So we're going to be going back and forth with some of these slides. So hopefully it'll be a good, lively presentation for all of you as well. So first and foremost, what are our session objectives? What are we going to talk about today? We're going to define voice and choice and situate it as part of culturally inclusive design. We're also going to talk about the impact of voice and choice on learner agency. So we're going to talk about personalized learning and really how that can also help cognitive engagement, and then identify ways to incorporate these aspects within the design of your online courses. So voice and choice, what do they mean? What are we talking about? Voice really refers to that empowerment that we want to give our students so that they have a voice in the class. They can share their experiences, their ideas, their perspectives based on what they already know, based on their life experience, based on what they're interested in. Choice looks at those course learning situations where students have an opportunity to choose something. So whether that be, I'm going to choose type of content I'm going to interact with, or I'm going to choose this learning activity or this assessment, it really refers to that learner agency that comes along with it that allows them to help make decisions about their own learning and their learning path. So taking these two things together really looks at online course design from a very student-centered perspective, so that you have these strategies that can serve to elevate cognitive engagement and also really help to empower students in their learning. So how do we relate this then to inclusive design? So we're going to cover these 3 points. What is inclusive design? Why is inclusive design important? And how do voice and choice promote this idea of inclusion? So what is inclusive design? And there's many kind of terms and phrases that refer to this concept that we're going to talk about. You might have heard it referred to as culturally inclusive or culturally reflexive. We're expanding that notion a little bit to just say inclusive, because inclusion is not just related to culture, for example. It's related to all the ways that we want to respect and recognize our students as individuals and their related experience, and include them and create an inclusive atmosphere in our course. So it focuses on these student-centered approaches for creating this environment that really meets the needs of diverse learners. So not just, students are one thing, right? We think about the diversity of our entire cohort of learners, and it's not just about delivering good education or good online experience to only a certain segment of our students. So that is the inclusive aspect that we're talking about. It provides them, so this is that voice and choice aspect already creeping in, this opportunity to demonstrate their understanding, their skills, their competencies in a variety of ways. There's a lot of considerations. You can see plenty of them listed here: learner preferences, cultural knowledge, experiential knowledge that they've had throughout their life, thinking about neurodiversity considerations, technology limitations. A lot of us really had to face technology limitations during the remote shift, for example, and we saw how large segments of students were disadvantaged and not included because of that. And also aspects like power dynamics, systematic inequities, and looking at ways of how we structure our course or how our institution supports learners and whether or not it supports all learners in the ways that they really need it. So why is it important? It's not just important for the obvious reasons that we do want to be inclusive with our design, whether we're teaching face-to-face or online, but as we heard from our fantastic keynote yesterday, we also learned that there are student populations who really don't always experience the same type of success than our other students, right? So looking again at the diversity and respecting the diversity of our students, communicating that we have high expectations for all of them and that we are going to support them in ways that work for them to meet those expectations. It also includes really creating that safe space so that learners can be present, so that they could present themselves as a unique individual, and so that they can grow both in their learning and as a learner. Recognizing the importance of our impact within a global community. So our courses are not just our world, they are not just our campus, our institution, and they're not just our experience. So recognizing all these ripple effects that come out through that global community and recognizing the diversity of individuals that are brought to bear within that perspective. Looking at different identity groups for our students and how it really can broadly benefit them to cognitively engage them, to grow their critical thinking skills. And again, where they can learn from one another, they can engage with one another, especially within this online space where everybody is respected and supported, and you don't have any students that are left behind or students that are marginalized within that online environment. So how do voice and choice help to promote this idea of inclusion? First and foremost, voice and choice supports the democratization of the learning experience. It becomes something that is not just held by me as the instructor, where I'm making every choice and I've designed this class and you're going to do it. It really then becomes an exchange. I've designed my course so that I have this learning exchange. I have a feedback loop with my students, and they have some say in their learning. So whether it is certain personalized options, whether it's elevating their sense of agency, it is democratizing that space for them. Part of that is because they are empowered. I have given them some power within that design of that course to help co-construct their learning, to help co-create this inclusive environment, and it's purposeful. So something that goes along with this is be transparent with your students about what you've done in the design, why you've done it, why it's important. Invite them in from the beginning into this conversation. So include them into this conversation of inclusion. It really is something that can serve to promote trust, to build rapport. It is, tied to those concepts of presence, so social presence, teaching presence, even cognitive presence. It can enhance all of those. It also can enhance the rigor of your course, partially because it has that respect for diversity of thought and perspective. So you might be introducing new ideas within the course because you've made the choice to, during the design of your course, to include some voices that were marginalized at the beginning or who were never included but are a big part of your discipline. But it also fosters respect and increases that rigor because you're asking students to share as well. So again, it takes it, from this place of I, as the instructor, I'm the only authority on this, and the scholars that I've chosen for you to engage with, they are the only exposure that you're going to get to it, and it expands it. In doing so, it shows students this idea of inclusion and how it can really help broaden your perspective and increase your knowledge. Doing this also really respects and validates students' lived experiences, rather than saying to them, what you know about this or what you may have lived through or experienced about this, it's not important. We're not going to talk about that. Instead, it breaks down those walls and says, I want to know what experience you have with this, because it's meaningful and it adds to the classroom rapport, the classroom idea of connection, this building of a learning community, as well as their knowledge on the topic. now to Racheal, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the learning theories and frameworks that are related to inclusive design, and Amy's going to finish out that part as well. Racheal?
Thank you, Bethany. So we are going to take just a few moments to talk about some of the frameworks that are associated with inclusive design and how we can use these resources to help us as we're thinking about the ways in which we're redesigning our course to promote that inclusivity. One of them is the social emotional learning framework, which was created by the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And it breaks down into these competencies: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, as well as social awareness. And briefly, let's just take a quick look at each one of these. So self-awareness deals with our students, our learners' ability to identify their own motivations, their feelings, their behaviors, their beliefs, their values. And it helps them to understand how it impacts their behaviors in different contexts, in different situations. So it's important for our students to be guided through this process of understanding how what they feel internally can be influenced by and can also influence the situations that they find themselves in. Now, building on that, self-management is more about their control of those emotions and behaviors. It's not so much just, well, I feel this emotion or I feel like I want to do this, but that they are able to almost metacognitively think about, okay, well, what am I feeling and what is causing this? And how am I going to react? As opposed to being reactionary, they're able to control that and manage how they will respond, particularly as it relates to helping them set or meet the goals that they have set for themselves. As it relates to responsible decision-making, this promotes the idea that learners are able to assess and make constructive choices about their behaviors and how they are going to be engaging with other individuals. And so again, it ties into that self-management piece, but is much more focused on the decision-making process, that part where they are assessing how they feel internally and determining what their next step will be as they respond to whatever that stimuli might be. Now, when we're looking at the relationship skills competency, this is dealing with not only managing those emotions, but doing so in a way that contributes to healthy relationships. That could be with their peers in the classroom. When we're thinking outside of the classroom, it may be with roommates or with persons with whom they live. It could be with their instructors, their coaches, their academic advisors. But it's very much about the learner being knowledgeable about how they can manage those emotions that contribute to maintaining those relationships. And then finally, self-awareness deals with our learners' ability to be responsive to the needs, concerns, the emotions that might be expressed by other individuals. And so it's very much being aware not only of oneself, but how they exist within the context of their environment. Now, another framework that we can utilize is we're thinking about ways that contribute to inclusivity in our learning experiences that we're creating for our students is the Sociocultural Framework. Ooh, that's a long one, but it's so incredibly important. So this was developed by Castellanos and Gloria, and it was specifically related to their research on Latino and Latina students in higher education. And so as you see, it combines these three elements: the psychological portion of the framework, the social, as well as the cultural. Understanding, looking at students in higher education in this university context, what contributes to their persistence. So this was more so an anti-deficit framework. It was creating a success model. What elements need to be in place to support the achievement of these students that they were studying, which can be broadly applied to other minoritized groups as well. And so dealing with the psychological component, it focuses on self-efficacy as well as self-esteem. How are students feeling about themselves? How are they advocating for themselves? What do they believe about themselves? And how is that possibly impacted by the context in which they find themselves, particularly in the university space? As it relates to social, it deals with the family members, their mentors. What are the ideals that they hold? What are the norms that they experience? And they tie in with even the cultural piece. But what are those roles that they embody, as well as the individuals that are in place to support them as they hopefully persist throughout their college career? And then the cultural piece deals with ethnic identity as well as congruity. And so when we're talking about the ethnic identity, of course, it deals with their, a little feedback. It deals with, yes, their ethnic background, the customs, the roles that they embody within their frameworks that they share with other individuals from that cultural background. But also, as it relates to congruity, how does their lived experiences align with, or is there a lack of alignment with the environment in which they find themselves in higher education? So when they're in the classroom, as Bethany was sharing, are they invited to the table to contribute and co-construct the knowledge that's being presented, the activities in which they're engaging, the ways even in which they're being assessed, or are they being asked to kind of center themselves into what is currently and what we find as far as this mainstream idea of what higher education should look like? So we want to explore what is that congruity. And if there is a lack of congruity, we want to work toward creating environments that are much more aligned with a variety of experiences that our students come to us with, and ways of knowing and ways of learning that they bring to the table, which all support their persistence in their respective programs. Now, on the next slide is this idea of validation theory. Okay, so Laura Rendon created this concept of this theoretical framework, validation theory, which is broken into two types of validation: academic validation as well as interpersonal validation. Now, academic validation deals with any entity, any person, any type of stimuli in or outside of the classroom that contribute to a student's belief about their ability to learn and their ability to succeed. The interpersonal validation, again, taps into those entities in or outside of the classroom that impact learners' perceptions and their ability to engage in that self-development as well as engaging with others socially. And so there are 6 elements that fall into validation theory. And very briefly, I'm going to share with you what some of these are. So starting at the top right, we have the faculty advisors, coaches, and instructional personnel, all of those who are expected to be the instructional leaders for the students. We have a responsibility to reach out to our learners and invite them to the table. Let them know that we are there to support them and that we have resources available to assist them in their matriculation. Below that, learners are validated when they feel valued, when they feel those feelings of self-worth, and they understand and believe in their capability of succeeding in meeting their goals. They also feel valued, and learners who do feel valued and validated display confidence, not only in the learning experiences within the classroom, but also as they engage outside of the classroom in their campus environment. We should make sure that validation is a consistent presence. It's not an end goal. We're not racing to the finish line and being able to check off and say, yes, our students are validated, we're done. No, it is a continuous, lifelong process. We are always learning, we are always growing, and we're doing so along with our students, letting them know, validating them, and letting them know that this is a communal process of growth and discovery. And it is, we also want to make sure that it is integral in the process of student development. So it's not that end goal, it should be present, but it is also intentional about working with our students and helping them to develop their skills. And we do so with that final element of validation, making sure that we are integrating it into the beginning of their, as soon as our students come to us, whether they are transfer students, they may have been out in the field, or they are coming to us via more traditional routes. We want to make sure that we are validating our learners from the very beginning and throughout their matriculation in our degree programs.
Okay, you've heard a lot about the concepts of voice and choice, and these two terms are encapsulated in the broader umbrella of personalized learning environments, or PLE. PLE refers to an educational environment where students contribute to the decision process of what and how they will learn, in part because they act as subjects and owners of their own learning process, rather than objects. PLE enables students to collaborate through resources outside their predefined online learning environment. The U.S. Department of Education strengthens personalization by saying that the key points to personalization are making sure that the learning is meaningful, it's relevant, it's interest-driven, and it's self-initiated. And those are the key points to having a personalized learning environment. Now, this may sound kind of overwhelming at this point, so it may not all happen at once, but you can do it in stages. In stage one of creating a PLE, the instructor and the learner work together. Let me back up. In stage one, the instructor is dipping their toes into creating that personalized learning environment by encouraging voice and choice. So to do that, they may want to encourage their learners to create their own learning goals based on how they learn best. The instructor then uses this information to then redesign some of the learning activities. In stage two, we take that a little bit further, and the instructor and the learner are co-designing the learning activities. So the learner is responsible to acquire the skills and knowledge to choose the appropriate tools, methods, and strategies they need to accommodate how they learn best. And then a final stage is where the instructor and the learner are partners in the learning process. Learners are self-directed, they drive their own learning at their own pace. The learning environment is no longer confined to that course room. So learners are expanding their knowledge to include their home, their community, their extracurricular activities, their interests, their lived experiences. All of that is now creating that personalized level of learning. This is a culture shift that takes time and commitment as well as perseverance. So now let's transition to the why, what, and how of learning that really work nicely with a personalized learning environment. You've probably all heard about Universal Design for Learning at this point, which is a framework to improve and optimize teaching and learning for everyone based on scientific insights on how humans learn. It's an ideal framework for personalized learning because it addresses the uniqueness of each learner and the variability in how they assess, engage, and express their learning. So the three main aspects of UDL are making sure we're including multiple means of engagement. So what motivates and inspires passion differs from person to person. Each learner knows what works best for them, what strategies they like, what tools they want to engage with. So put in those multiple means of engagement to help the students kind of personalize their learning. When we talk about multiple means of representation, we are talking about access. Each learner is unique in how they best access content and process information into usable knowledge. So they should be able to choose from a variety of learning modes. And then finally, we have multiple means of action and expression. Each learner knows how they best express what they know and understand using actions such as writing, presenting, drawing, acting, building, sharing. Every student is going to want to express their knowledge in their own unique way. So by applying UDL principles, we can reduce those individual barriers to the curriculum and maximize learning for everyone. Voice and choice is a component of learner agency. By enabling the learner to have input on engaging with materials and activities that they are most engaged with to assist in their learning. Agency specifically refers to someone's power, control, and authority in a situation. It can be thought of as a catalyst for change or transformation. Within a learning context, learner agency is about shifting the ownership of learning from the instructor to the learner, enabling learners to have the understanding, ability, and opportunity to be part of that learning design and to take action to intervene in their learning process, to affect outcomes and become powerful lifelong learners. Learners demonstrate, go back, Bethany. Sorry. Learners demonstrate agency when they influence and direct their own learning and make choices. They voice their opinions, ask questions and then express their questions, communicate their understandings, construct new meanings, and participate in their learning community. Now we can go to the next one. Walkington and Bernicki in 2014 framed different approaches to personalization as differing on 3 key dimensions. First, personalization can occur at varied degrees of depth, which captures the extent to which instructional tasks take into account and capture the lived, authentic experiences of learners. Second, personalization can occur at different grain sizes, where the experience is personalized for each learner individually, from small groups of learners matched on specific dimensions, or larger groups based on more general parameters. And then finally, personalization can vary with respect to ownership, the degree to which learners are given control and choice in the learning situation. In expanding on ownership, learners can develop a sense of agency so that they can self-advocate, self-regulate, and ultimately self-direct their own learning. Next one. Applying this depth, ownership, and the group sizes can be very challenging in an asynchronous online environment. In asynchronous online courses, ideally, we design and develop them in a learning management system prior to the course being taught, making it very challenging to embed personalization in there. But there are some ways that you can actually embed some personalization into your courses. Personalized learning can be implemented in any course. The lens just has to switch from that instructor-centered approach to a more learner-centered approach. And small steps can occur over time with pre-planning around that lens. When discussing personalized learning, focus on how to start and what to do at the beginning. And the small changes can make a big difference. Certainly keep the end in mind, but concentrate what are you doing right now and how you will start this personalized journey. Remember, design is an iterative process. Personalized learning is about creating an educational pathway that takes into account the needs and desires of each learner, while still designing a course around the course learning outcomes. You may want to consider collaborating with your peer instructors to design a course to include elements of personalized learning and create common rubrics that can be used across learners' unique learning path. Personalized learning creates a learning community that speaks to learner autonomy and reignites a passion for learning. Implementation of the learner-centric practice of voice and choice has been shown to support the democratization of the learning experience, which Bethany originally talked about. One way to understand learner agency is in terms of 3 core values: voice, choice, and opportunity. Voice
I think Amy has frozen. She
I did
frozen
not
for
know
other
if that was
folks?
me.
Oh, okay. Racheal, do you want to pick this slide up?
Sure, absolutely. So yes, so we definitely want to make sure that as we're thinking about these opportunities that are provided by learner agency, for example, it does let us know that it counteracts the inherent bias that certain theories or for certain theories, scholars, and approaches. So we know that our learners come to the table, there are a number of experiences that they've already had as it relates to the way in which the environment has already been constructed. And they may already be accustomed to not advocating for themselves, not being able to share in the creation of that. And this allows us to address some of those biases that many of us may not even, because we're so close to it and we're so accustomed to utilizing this approach, that we may be oblivious to. So having our students being able to bring that to our attention and helping us to modify the learning environment is a great way to make sure that we are creating these inclusive spaces. It also provides that recognition and appreciation for students' lived experiences. Our students are bearers of knowledge. They come to us with years of experience, not only from what they have actively been involved in, but even the environments, the perspectives that they bring to the table are great ways to make sure that we are creating not only inclusive environments, but we're doing so in a way in which students who may be part of populations that are traditionally minoritized no longer feel as though they are minoritized in the classroom. They are not unique, they are not unicorns, for example, and this is coming from someone whose mascot was a unicorn in high school, but they are valued members of the community who are bringing these unique perspectives to the table. It's also a way to make sure that we are creating and providing well-designed opportunities for dialogue and collaboration. Having these inclusive environments and promoting learner agency, make sure that our students are able to share in this sense of power, this sense of equity. They do not feel, again, ostracized. They do not feel as though they are outsiders, but that they are empowered in their learning experiences and they can take ownership of their learning. And it also promotes that increased student engagement, which elevates that motivation that they have. It supports meaning, connection, and it assists in their persistence because they are involved. They take ownership of their learning experience and they feel as though they are true members of that learning environment. Now, on the next few slides, we're only going to take about 2 minutes or so to share with you some application strategies that you can use in both preparing your learners as well as supporting your learners, keeping voice and choice in mind and addressing this idea of learner agency. So one of the things that we can do as we're preparing our learners to engage in the space is making sure that we're acknowledging any potential concerns that they may have and openly indicating our willingness as instructors to support them through that process. Many of us are already experienced with this approach as we, for example, are supporting our learners who may have accommodations as explained to us by our institutions. It is important not only to receive that information about accommodations, but to reach out to our students, let them know that we have been made aware and that we are here to make sure that they understand how those types of accommodations will be applied in the course. A very unique way that I've seen this done recently on a QM review that I'm actually chairing right now, the course representative had a student approach them, letting them know that their native language is Spanish. And in a doctoral course, they actually felt more comfortable articulating their ideas if they could do so in their target language, which happened to be one of the languages that the instructor was fluent in. And because of that, because producing this information in English wasn't necessarily an objective of the course, but to make sure that the students were able to meet the objectives that were listed, the instructor letting the student know that they understood their concern and that because they felt more comfortable articulating their thoughts at that level in their target language, the instructor allowed them to do so and met with them individually, consulted with them, had office hours with them in Spanish, which created an environment which was much more inclusive and allowed the student to understand that they were heard, they could advocate for themselves, and that they were welcome in that environment. Now, on the next slide, we have a few more strategies for preparing our learners. We want to make sure that we are in our design, are building in opportunities for students to ask for and receive assistance, letting them know that we are available to support them, that we have done our best to create these environments that support inclusivity and encourage learners to engage in a variety of ways, but we're not going to be able to think of everything. And one of the reasons why I like that so much is because it takes the pressure off of us as instructors and instructional designers to think we have to do everything. I saw a comment in the chat asking about, well, providing opportunities for voice and choice can be overwhelming, and they can. So we want to address this responsibly and making sure that we are creating environments that support our learners, but also us, and that we're not including unnecessary obstacles and barriers. And thinking again about those environments that our students are already socialized into, letting them know that, you know what, we are going to deviate away from this because we recognize that there are other ways in which we can encourage healthy collaborations and conversations among our learners that they may not have yet experienced. Now, as we are supporting our learners, on the next slide, we have a few tips for you. We want to make sure that you are providing prompt, consistent, and reassuring communication. Again, letting our learners know that they are on the right track, letting them know and giving them opportunities to self-correct if necessary. You can do this by hosting live and consistent check-ins with them. You can be available via virtual office hours. You can even record videos at the beginning of the week, just letting them know that they're on track, letting them know what they should be doing and how they're expected to progress through the rest of the week. But it's so important to make sure that you are providing that meaningful feedback that gives your students the tools that they need to be able to self-correct if necessary and progress through the course. And on this next slide, we have just a few final recommendations for you. It's important for us to make sure that as we are selecting our instructional materials and even the learning activities and assessments that we're using in our course to meet the objectives of the course, we're doing so in ways that provide representatives, those exemplars of our students' future successful selves. Our students should see persons who act like them, who speak like them, who live like them as exemplars within a variety of disciplines. And so being able to do that and embed that in our course design is a helpful way to create inclusive environments that remind our students that they are valued before they walk in the door, before they log on to the learning management system. They are valued, and we have thought of them in the design of our courses. And in doing so, we also want to make sure that we are providing continuous and authentic communication means so that our students feel that they are supported, they are valued, and that they have access to us when they need it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Racheal. So looking at design considerations specifically when we're talking about how do you actually apply this? How do you do all these great things that we're talking about? Well, as usual, it begins with the design of your course. So looking at the materials, for example, that you are selecting, whether that's creating those materials or curating those materials, as well as the learning activities that you're choosing to design into your course, make sure that they represent a diversity of backgrounds, a diversity of thought, a diversity of value systems. This comes into play in small ways that maybe, aren't even on your radar, such as selecting images for the course. Does every image, for example, of somebody in authority, is it an older white male? Or are you representing a diversity of leadership in your course, right? So, again, as Racheal said, students should be able to see themselves in your course. They should be able to see and be represented in your course. So even small things that maybe, you think are innocuous and not part of this, like images, they are. And that goes all the way, again, then to choosing your content and your instructional materials. Looking at the types of interaction that you've planned, making sure that there is a chance for students to be authentic, to be representative, to share their experiences. And again, this comes from the design of this course. It comes from how you are structuring those interaction opportunities, because you have to design interaction into your course. It's not going to happen spontaneously and organically in that asynchronous online environment. Also, make sure to embed opportunities for students to ask for and receive assistance. And this kind of goes along with that QM standard where students are given the opportunity to check their knowledge along the way. And it's not just that they get a grade at a point where then they can't do anything about it. If I don't do good on the midterm, I can't go back and repeat all that material before it. So it's really embedding this within the design of your course so that students have a chance to really get that guidance from you, to really interact with other students so that they could increase their knowledge, broaden their perspective, and really do that check-in so they can readjust their approach as the course goes on. Additionally, looking at different types of learning activities and make sure that they are, again, framed by those topics that are representative of your learners. And, if you're thinking to yourself, well, the cohort of my students, that they're pretty homogenous. First of all, don't make that assumption. You never know what someone's background is. But secondly, even if you feel that you do have a pretty homogenous student cohort, it's important to include other representations in so that in your course, you're not simply reifying what is right now, the predominant paradigm or the predominant, this is this type of person that's, effective and successful in this profession, right? Look at ways that you can expand the horizons and the thoughts of students that are in your course, even if it's something new to them. Look also at your alignment and make sure that you're intentionally doing things that really respect and encourage diverse ways of knowing, diverse ways of thinking, diverse ways of applying what you're talking about within your course. So some practical examples, because we did want to leave you with some good takeaways as we, round out our presentation. Practical examples for elevating voice and choice in your online courses. Here's an example for a literature course. And also some of these examples here that we're talking about, if any of you work on developing those, they're called foundational courses, sometimes they're called master courses, but ideally they're collaboratively designed by several professors who can then go on and teach it, or somebody else goes on and teach it. This also respects that. So there's a faculty aspect here. But let's say that you're teaching a literature course and you know what the pedagogical goal is for a particular assignment, you know what that content needs to be, but you also know that a variety of content can meet that need. So what you do is you include those in the course as a choice for students, and they have the option, so as an example here, to choose between various novels or to bring their own nomination to you as the instructor and say, can I use this for the assignment? And that really respects your pedagogical goal for the assignment, but it still introduces that choice to students. Another example we have here is in a history course. So, say it's a history course, maybe it's on the Civil War, and you look at all the different events that you really want students to concentrate on for a particular reason, and you say, look, you can choose from one of these events, and that's how you can tailor your assignment to something that you're interested in, right? Something that reflects your interest and your goals. They could, then create a peer lesson from it. So this is another aspect, I think a really exciting aspect of this, that interaction with students where they really can bring their personal interests, their experiential knowledge to a topic. You can do that as a share out. So if you're doing a synchronous environment, you could have them create a lesson where they're actually talking about something, during that synchronous session, or they could create a peer lesson in an asynchronous environment. So that way they are preparing something, but they're also sharing with others so that all of the class benefits from their unique way of looking at something, unique way of looking at a topic. As a third example here, so we have students that are given a choice for how they complete a related project. So this is a great idea for those courses that have that larger culminating assessment at the end of the course. And think to yourself, right? Is there a variety of ways that my students can meet this need, can really meet this learning outcome, can meet this pedagogical goal that I have for them? And maybe it's giving them the option to, you could write a paper and you have some details around that, so that there's equity between these different options. So maybe it's, 5 or 10 page paper, but they could also do a presentation. Maybe they could do some other type of multimedia project. They could also come to you and say, hi, I have this great idea, and I think it really does align with the goals of this assignment, but it's a little bit outside of the box from the options that you have listed here. Can I talk to you about that? Give them that opportunity as well, right? And model that for them. So the other part of including these examples within your design is helping them play out through your active delivery once that course begins. Continuously through the course, reify what you are doing here and reassert to students, this is a place for all of us. When you have those questions, when you have a different option for how you want to approach assignment, when you want to bring in different content, and I haven't thought of it as the instructor, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to you about it, right? And that hopefully can also inform your revision of the course. You're potentially going to get some great ideas from students through doing that, just from communicating your openness to have them really being, a member of the class where they get to share their knowledge, their experience, their perspective, their views, and their life, who they are. So thankfully, we left 5 minutes here. I see there's a lot of wonderful things going on in the chat. So we wanted to take some time. I'm going to stop sharing just to answer a question that got asked frequently. We are definitely going to upload a PDF of these slides, so no worries. Hopefully you weren't trying to write everything down. That will be on the conference platform. But what questions can we answer for you, or points that you would like to make that we didn't make? I know we have a lot of knowledge in this room. I'm so happy that this was, a very nice, well-attended session. Racheal, maybe you even saw some things in the chat that you wanted to highlight while I was speaking.
I see a recommendation for this being a workshop. On board for that. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one comment on the chat I did want to pick up on, Ursula, I think it was you that had made the comment about, faculty having these same needs as well. So for those of you that do faculty development, whether it's workshops, courses, what have you, instructional designers, when you work with faculty in those wonderful collaborative team efforts, this goes for faculty as well, right? So in what ways, if you're creating faculty development, maybe you're not an instructor, are you inviting faculty to bring in their own experiences, right? So that it's not this, we're just going to talk about this one type of professor, right? If you are a first gen student and then you become a professor, if you didn't have that mentoring that some instructors have and some instructors don't, how are we respecting the different ways that we approach teaching and our background, as we become instructors? I'm going to pop in the chat, see if we have
I'll share something while you're pulling that. And
yes.
Didn't think about it until just this moment, but that's a practice that we actually use right now at North Carolina Central University, where we have given professional development in other languages. So in our unit, obviously we speak English, Spanish, French, and Arabic. And we have, personally, I've given professional development, instructional design, professional development in Spanish to our colleagues in one of our units within our Department of Language and Literature, and consultations in the language, just because the instructors felt much more comfortable speaking academically in their native language. And so, sometimes we'll do things and don't think about, this could be something that could be more broadly applied and provided as a resource to our campuses. And especially as we're thinking about building buy-in with our colleagues and making sure for those of us who are instructional designers or in that instructional design space, there's so many different ways that we can create this collaborative sense of community, just really seeing our colleagues for who they are, their strengths, and making sure that we're capitalizing on those.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing that Amy, you mentioned in the chat, and I'm so thankful that you did, you can really give a good opportunity for voice as well within reflective activities and assignments. So if your LMS, for example, has the opportunity for private journals, that is where you can really start to ask students questions that allow them to open up in a really safe way. It is a fantastic interaction opportunity between instructor and student. It elevates your teaching presence, elevates social presence, really allows you to create that trust and build that rapport with students. So even early on, asking about, do you have any concerns about this class? And that's where I often find out that my students are, a single parent and they're juggling multiple jobs. they have health concerns, they have time concerns. That's not going to change the content of the course, right? But it helps me understand where they're starting from, what their situation is, all the different barriers that they are encountering, and also other ways that I could support them during the course. As the course is going on, you know, sometimes giving those private places where students can share concerns as they're going on. That's very helpful, because if the only opportunity is for an open discussion, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous, there's lots of students that are not going to have a voice in there. They may be more introverted. They may be talking about something that's personal or is more vulnerable to them, but see how you as the instructor can create and hold that space for them so that you can best support them in their learning as the course goes on. So I see we are right at 2:50. Lisa, thank you so much for putting that link in the chat for where you can find all the conference presentation, PowerPoints and handouts to download. I'm so thankful for you for that. Thank you. I did not have it handy. All right, I think that is us. We are out of time now, but big thanks to all of you for attending. I really appreciate this. Is a great chat as well. Amy and Racheal, I can't thank you enough. I loved working with you on this. We do have a corresponding chapter coming out about this information. It will be published. It's through AECT, and it'll be published in their annual book that stems from the Summer Research Symposium next year. So as a power trio, we're going to continue on and finish this work. And if you want to read more about it, please do check out that chapter that should be out sometime next year.
And that's just chapter 1, because as we found, there was a lot of topics that we need to further investigate.
Yes.
And 4,000 words was not enough.
We have more to do, more to come.
All
Yeah,
right, I have to stop you now. Thank you all for attending, and please be sure to complete the survey. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.